All right, here we go. There it is, episode 70 of the Odd G's podcast. Jason Martinez, Harry Mays. We're in the little boxes, Harry, because I wanted to start this podcast with a picture of our old boss and this hideous shirt that he's wearing. Your thoughts right out of the gate, Harry.
Well, I didn't know that our old boss, was friends with Sidney Pollack, the artist, because that's what it looks like. It looks like Sidney put the shirt down on his on the floor of his New York co-op and just like sprayed, and dripped paint all over it like he used to when I don't even know if that guy's alive anymore, that artist, but he was really tremendous, made a lot of money. All the rich people, all the celebrities have his paintings hanging in their big homes. But that's what it looks like to me when I first saw it. And I'm like, what is he crying? Is this a message for help?
Yeah. Is he seeking help?
Yes.
Is he looking to be, taken to a home?
Yeah, because I know he's in Northern California, not far from San Francisco, and the station that he runs is in San Francisco. So he might be in a little trouble because it's crazy out there. Yeah. And that town has gone to what, and maybe he's in trouble. Maybe we need to reach out.
Did you think he dropped off one of DeCamera's all-white busboy shirts to Sidney Pollack, Harry, and said, dress this thing up for me?
No, not even Sidney Pollack could make one of those shirts wearable. Okay.
Yes. Not Kevin Pollack.
No, not Kevin Pollack.
Who's going to do it? You? I got to get this thing off my screen.
Oh, man. I saw that this morning. You see, the thing is not only do you send me that stuff, Nick Cale sends it to me. So I'm getting a double barrel. And I'm like, enough with this.
You cannot avoid it.
He's doing these daily episodes, or they pretty much are daily, I think, from the corner office, the old boss. And Nick seems to think that I need to see this every day. Sends them to me every day.
Like he's still programming a station you work for.
Right.
That is not the case, I can assure you.
No. Wow.
Real quick, on this episode, we're going to hear from, he's going to join us in just a couple moments, Kyle Scott Leskowski. He's used his real last name now because he's a professional and he made millions on Crossing Broad. He, of course,
he made millions, and now he can use his real name. Yeah. There's no need to hide that real name anymore. It's like, screw you, I'm rich.
Yeah, I'm not in Witsec anymore.
Right.
I'm not eating noodles with ketchup anymore, Harry. I'm on prime rib.
Right. No more ramen for Kyle Scott.
But the thing that's interesting, we'll talk to Kyle about it, is it was not like this arc of success for him with Crossing Broad. Mm-hmm. There was some really rough times. He'll talk about it, and he's got a new venture with walkingtheboards.com, shorecribs.com as well, pushing all in on the Jersey Shore, which I don't think is a bad thing, considering how this area and so many people love going down the shore. So we'll talk to him about that. Plus, we'll get into some of this stuff with the Orioles announcer. Are you seeing this stuff with this Kevin Brown guy?
Yeah, I just saw that, last night or this morning. And I think Awful Announcing or John Boy Media is where I first saw it. Mm-hmm. And, I listened to the audio with the video this morning in bed, 6 o'clock when I'm opening up my phone. And it says the guy got suspended. So I listened to the clip because every now and then some of these announcers, some famous ones like, Tom Brenneman, was caught on a hot mic saying something he shouldn't have said. And he got fired, and his, tremendous career is over. So I wanted to see, is this another guy who said something stupid? And I listened to the clip, I don't know, a minute and a half, 2.5 minutes long. It's the intro to a game the Orioles are about to play against the Tampa Bay Rays in Tampa. And I'm like, what did this guy do wrong?
I had to listen to it again. I didn't hear anything.
I listened to it 3 times.
Yeah.
3 times.
Yep.
Because it's early in the morning. I'm thinking I'm going to miss it. And then I saw the graphic that they overlay while he's doing the voiceover. And I'm thinking it said tropical depression. And I'm thinking, did somebody overreact thinking that was hurtful, or, it was being insensitive to people with depression? Is that what got this guy suspended?
Yeah.
But apparently it's not. Apparently it's not.
No, it's because of, I'm not even going to play it because it's a nothing burger of what he said.
Yeah, the fact was spitting facts.
Yeah, they've won more games this season in Tampa than they did the last however many it was.
Yeah,
there's nothing there.
Right.
There's no there.
Right.
I thought I was listening close too, going, is there something that was was this taped and he said something on a hot mic that went
Right.
over this?
Right.
That was couldn't
Or
find
somebody
it.
that was off camera said something. Maybe
Yeah.
his co-host, you know, the
Yep.
analyst might have said something on a mic that he didn't know was on. And no, he's basically just stating how bad the Orioles have been against Tampa over these past couple of years. And the Orioles are having a great season this year. And
Yep.
you know how much of a stark contrast it is when they play Tampa Bay.
Yeah, the Orioles obviously are getting murdered,
Oh, and they should.
and they should. Yeah.
And this guy will get hired by, you know, he'll get hired tomorrow. He's pretty good.
Is he one of the good ones out there? He's
Yeah,
a young
pretty
guy.
good.
He's
I
a
mean,
pretty
he's a young guy, but he's up and comer. He's pretty good. He's been with the Orioles for a couple of years now.
And he couldn't have gotten better advertising for his brand than
Right.
this. You know, being persecuted in Baltimore.
Right.
Later on, I'll play what Mad Dog Russo had to say about it, because there's some funny things in what Dog said. Because Dog does the old radio trick when you're on the air and you don't have a ton. You just keep repeating the same things. It's a disgrace. I mean, it's a disgrace. It's a total
Right.
disgrace.
Yeah.
You repeat the same thing over and over again to eat time.
Right. Especially when you're doing a show by yourself.
Yes.
Yeah. And
I
it's,
don't care
and
what
it's,
MLB
and it's the
Network's
first
gonna
week of
say.
August. You start repeating things a lot.
Yes, you do. Let's go to a guy right now who covered the Radio Wars, started
Yes.
the Radio Wars, if you will. Also, the great website, crossingbroad.com. He's got a new venture. He's going to talk about that and much, much more. He joins us right now. It is Kyle Scott Laskowski. You're using the real name now. You're out of witness protection. What's going
You
on,
got
Kyle?
the full name. What's up, man? What's up,
Hey.
guys?
Malvern alum too, Harry.
Oh, that's right. Right. Villanova too, right?
Yes.
Villanova and Malvern.
Now, is that a
Jason,
fake-
actually, last night I wore my 2001 Malvern prep shirt. It still fits.
Oh,
Worth the bet.
wow.
Yeah. It's
Wow.
falling
What-
apart, but it works.
A T-shirt?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jeez.
From freshman year of high school.
Wow. Now, is that a fake background? One of those things that StreamYard or Zoom gives you, or is that real?
This
That's
is
IKEA,
all
Harry.
real.
Wow.
This is real. This is
That's
my
like a
shore,
real
This is my
house.
shore background.
That's like a real house.
Yeah.
yeah.
That Crossing
Out of the
Broad sale
basement.
did well, Harry.
That's right.
So where are you now? Are you living down the shore full time?
Now, over the summer. We're in Ocean City for the summer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I got to
I
talk.
try
about,
not to come back. I've had to come back a few times, but I try to
How do you
keep it
like-
down here.
How do you like living down there all summer?
I love it. It's great. Our kids are by August. The kids are kind of over the beach, so
Yeah.
August is a little tougher. But June and July are great.
Are you schlepping that big cart down to the beach with? My wife packs it with about 90 tons of shit that we don't need, and I'm
Yeah.
schlepping that thing over the sand, and I'm like, oh God, enough of this.
Well, explain what's the cart? What's in the cart?
When you have kids, Harry, they load
Yeah, I
up
don't
the
have
beach
kids.
cart,
Okay.
Everything.
and like when you go to the
So the
beach, Harry,
chairs and all this stuff, is that what you're talking
chairs,
about? The umbrellas?
coolers,
Okay.
boogie boards, you name it.
Okay.
Like enough food to feed an army.
So I have a routine. So after you do it enough, you get a routine, right?
Mhm.
So the routine is I got the backpack cooler on the back with the beverages, which is heavy, but they sort of balance those things so you can wear it. The cart has 4 beach chairs, 2 adult, 2 kids, 2 boogie boards, 4 shovels, 2 footballs, a baseball bat, 4 balls, and like whatever other beach toys the kids can pile on top. Plus, by the end of the summer, about 15 pounds of sand. So
Yeah.
that's my leg workout for the summer is trudging that thing across a quarter of a mile.
That's why the T-shirts still fit, by the way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Schlepping
I
that cart.
I like
Yeah.
how you have 4 shovels, though.
Well, we got the neighbors' kids, and then like we tend
Oh.
to like sort of collect beach toys over the summer that aren't ours.
Uh-huh.
So it's sort of like a donation pile after a while.
You're down there at the beach. This was the first hole I dug.
Yeah.
You said- let's talk about kind of where it started for you with Crossing Broad. You get out of college, you get out of Villanova. Did you just not know what you wanted to do? Was this the plan in college? When did the germination begin for Crossing Broad?
I mean, I always wanted to do sports media stuff, like you guys. So not totally unique there. In college, I had an internship at Sportsnet my junior year. So I would go down on like weeknights and, 5 to 11 p.m. and I'd log footage, of like, random NHL games at 8 p.m. Right. So they can cut up 8 seconds of highlights. And then I looked around, I was like, oh my God, like a lot of these people are working terrible hours for little pay, you know, and there's Barkan who's making good money on TV, and there's Leslie, and then there's like 50 behind the scenes people who are doing the real work, not making a tenth as much, working worse hours, staying till 1 a.m. And I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. You know, I'm not good on camera. And I'm like, even if you want to do it, I got to go to Idaho for a year and then Kentucky for another year.
Pay your dues. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and you know, you got guys locally like Keith Jones who sort of quickly at a young age got back to Philly. But I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. So when I graduated college, I went into ad sales, the Inquirer, and I was like, maybe I could like back my way into the sports department. And it doesn't work that way. Nope. But you know, so that's what I did after school. And then after a few years of working, I hated it. I was like, I'm just going to try and start my own thing, see if it works.
Wow. I mean, and then you come up with what became Crossing Broad. I mean, what was the mindset of how to say, you know, we're going to go on the internet, we're going to talk about Philly sports and more, but I sort of have to make this thing where people will note it, you know, sort of make it my own. You know, it's not the way an NBC might do it or another, you know, a radio station's website might do it. What were some of the things that you thought of initially to say, this is going to brand me differently?
Yeah. I mean, so as you guys know, like I kind of always hated the beat writers, right? Like, and some of them do a really good job, but I thought so much of it was just the same crap over and over again, right? And there's so many people doing the same thing, and the good ones stand out. You know, the Tim McManuses of the world and Jim Salisbury's. You know, there are people who stand out and do a really good job. So it's not to like knock everybody. But I was like, at the time, I used to read like just a lot of like tech blogs, right? And I was like, man, these things are big businesses. I was reading like the Apple blog about like the new iPhone. I was like, these guys are making a killing. I could see their traffic. You could see all their ads. And then I looked at local sports, and it was like, these guys are all just, it's like a club. You know, the Fightins was linking to the 700 level, was linking to Zoo with Roy, and like was linking to Broad Street Hockey. And no one was really treating it like a business. It was just a hobby. And I was like, you know, there's enough eyeballs in Philly and other cities. If you get enough scale, you can sell ads. So I read like, you know, I would read like TMZ. There's this old blog called What Would Tyler Durden Do? And it was just like super gruff, just ripping on celebs and, you know, models. And I was like, if I could sort of bring that, I don't want to say cutting edge, but that like snark and visceral thing to Philly sports, that TMZ of Philly sports, like that will be different. And, you know, we sort of lucked out into some stuff. Like Jeff Carter was really interesting early on. The Phillies were so good, and we covered their off the field stuff. And I think, you know, like Harry, I remember like you and Tony would mention the site, and I'd be like, oh, cool. You know, we got to mention on the radio. This is standing out. This is working. And it pissed a lot of people off, but at least it was different. You know, the site's grown up a lot over the years. It doesn't do as much of that, but it's still, you know, it still has a different angle to it even now.
Yeah, it was show prep for me every day.
Well, seriously. I always thought of it as like what Sports Talk Radio did. I was like, we're that on the internet. We're the water cooler stuff. And a lot of writers take, you know, the craft of writing, the capital J journalism stuff so damn seriously. I was like, if we have fun in writing like they're having on the radio or even TV sometimes, like people will read it. There's a lot of bored 26-year-olds at work like me at the time who were like, you know, I'll read this. I need 10 minutes to kill while I have my lunch.
Yeah, because it didn't kind of play by the rules of conventional journalism. And I think people were sick of that polished thing. Like everything had to be, it was so like uniform, everything, no matter whether you went to this site, Inquirer.com, or you went to ESPN, or whatever you went to, it was all like kind of this polished, very in the same lane thing where you, I think, differentiated yourself. I don't know if this was like your mission statement was to be just like conversational, like talk about the shit that actually people care about, as opposed to just sticking to this really narrow lane of so-and-so hit, you know, went 3 for 4. Who gives a shit? Like anybody can find that on the internet ad nauseum. Is that what kind of differentiated you guys? And were you seeing, how long did it take for people to start going, okay, this is a repeat for me where I got to come here every day?
Yeah. I mean, I always thought of it like, I tried to write every post. I didn't purposely do it in character, but like, I definitely had a tone, right? Kyle Scott had a tone that was like, not really me. Like, if you know me, I'm like not as aggressive as I came across on the website, but I always was like, I'm trying to write like a somewhat funny email to buddies who are in the Philly sports. Right. And part of that, to your point about everything being so like formal, is even in the Inquirer, you would still get things like Philly's first baseman, Ryan Howard. Right. You know, it's like anyone reading this knows who the hell Ryan Howard is at this point.
Yeah.
You know, that New York Times style, overly formal. And it's like, we'll call him Rhino. We'll call him the big piece. We'll just call him Howard. Like, people know who you're talking about. And I think those are little things. And I think sports have gotten away from that. You know, even like the professional journalists have gotten away from doing that too much. But like, it just made it so
casual,
like, pandering. Yeah. And we wanted to make it casual.
You wanted to be casual. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know, you know, that Jason loves this, but there seemed to be, and obviously you seem to be a big Flyers fan, because there was a flight that if I wanted to find out stuff about the Flyers, that your place is where I went first.
Not the radio, Harry.
No.
Not the flagship station, right?
No.
Yeah, I mean, early on, it was definitely the Phillies. Like that first year, I launched the site the day they traded Lee and got Halladay. Like that sort of mind-boggling move Ruben did, you know, then he got Lee back the next year.
I was with Jody Mack then.
Yeah, and it was launched around that. But very quickly, it was clear that if we were going to do this sort of TMZ style thing, the Flyers are just really interesting. And, you know, after I was just like, people would start sending us pictures of Carter and Richards at the bar. And I'm like, would I send this to my 10 buddies? Yes. So like, there's probably thousands of other 10 buddies out there who are going to find this interesting. So that worked. And then the Flyers were really interesting then too, because not only they have Richards and Carter, but then shortly after, a year or two, was Brizgalov. There was 24/7. There was a couple of Winter Classics. And like, that was the height of that. Yep. So, and as you guys know, there's not a ton of local Flyers coverage. And the mainstream outlets poo-poo it for the most part, unless they're really good. And it was like, okay, this is a niche that's underserved. And most of the guys who like it are kind of our target audience, mid-20s, you know, bros. And that was that.
Yeah, they're happy you're reading about how many beers Mike Richard pounded and not going, you know, how many penalties he killed.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Wow. When did you see the site traffic start to kind of boom a bit, and where you were going, okay, I'm assuming you were living with your parents at the time, and you know, just trying to forge away, but like, when did you say, okay, this might actually be a viable business? Like, what were the events that was it Riley Cooper?
No, it was before that. So I was full time for a couple of years by the time the Riley Cooper thing happened. That was the year it started making like what I would consider a livable, decent salary. But no, so the first year was 2010, and I kind of did it in fits and starts early in the year. And then I created this Facebook fan page for Roy Halladay, and just like as a fan, and it got like 80,000 followers. So every time I would write a blog post, I would put it on that page. So from almost day one, I was able to get a couple hundred views per blog post. And I mean, to anyone listening who started a blog, like early on, you might get 0 or 1 or your buddy, right? And so just seeing that, like, okay, dozens of people are reading this was enough to, okay, I'll keep going. You know, someone like this, and then you'd get a comment trickle through, or someone would reply to a tweet. And it's like, okay, now I got a little bit of an audience. But I would say it was by the end of the year, we got enough traffic doing sort of the snarky thing that somehow I convinced my dad to let me quit my job and move in their basement and blog full time, right? And then 5 days later is when the Phillies got Cliff Lee back. And the interest just went through the roof. And we did all those like Photoshops and those memes of the four horsemen, R2C2. And it just, like 6 hours later, it was on Fox Good Day. They were showing, they had a link to our site, and I had just quit my job. So that was like the moment where our traffic doubled. And I was like, okay, like, you know, we have enough of an audience that if I'm like halfway competent, I could sell enough advertising to, you know, live in my parents' basement, right? You know, keep my dad off my back for 6 months.
Talk about some of the blowback that you got from the traditional media outlets or journalists.
Yeah. So my favorite, oh man, wish I could find it. But I have an email that Tim Panaccio sent the Flyers.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, man. I want to quote it accurately, but basically the gist of it was, he sent an email to the Flyers PR department saying, stop sending this a-hole press releases. He works from his mother's basement, and at that moment I knew, I was like, okay, I've successfully got under these guys' skin because they didn't even want me to get the token press release.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think we were pretty tough. Like, I didn't pull any punches. Went after Marcus Hayes a lot. I'm sure you guys, fell in the crosshairs at some point. We were kind of equal opportunists, but we kind of picked on a handful of people, and that resonated. And I think it was with good reason. I didn't have some like, hey, I'm going to do this and it's going to get traffic, and it wasn't like that. I was like, if I think something is shit, like, I'm going to say it. I'm going to go after the guy, and I probably crossed the line early on, but it resonated with people because I think it's the same stuff people were, again, emailing and texting to their buddies. Like, can you believe what this guy wrote? Like, this is so dumb. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, we got a lot. The Phillies writers, especially, would show up in the DMs sometimes unhappy. But
did you ever get players, or I'm sure, like, not general managers, but maybe people from the organizations?
Not as much as you'd think. Like, I heard through the grapevine that, like, people who knew Carter and Richards were like, hey, these guys, they read it every day, but they hate the site, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we really, picked on them, and probably helped, like, grow their persona of party boys. I don't think we did them any favors, or I did them any favors, but
Dry Island.
Dry Island, yeah. Honestly, one we got under the skin of was Utley, and Chase Utley was like my favorite athlete of all time. And when him and his wife had their first baby, they sent a picture to a bunch of friends, and one of those people forwarded it to us. And so I did a post. I was like, here's the first official pic of baby Utley, right? And of course it got 1 million views. And then, like, an hour later, I heard from their agent, and he's like, listen, Jen Utley is in tears. Like, my wife's had 2 kids. Those first couple of weeks are pretty emotional. She's in tears. She didn't want this out there. They want their privacy. They want to sue you. And I was like, oh my God, I don't want to offend the great Chase. I'll take it down. So yeah, that was one of the ones I remember. I was like, oh no, I don't want to.
Like, it was baby Jesus.
Well, yeah, I mean, it kind of is around here.
Right.
Yeah. A couple years later, though, she bought 2 of our Utley shirts. So I guess they were okay with us after a while.
That's awesome. Wow.
Yeah.
I know Jason wants to get to this, and this is what, brought a lot more people to your site that I'm sure weren't going there just for sports, but the radio wars thing. Talk about that, how that first got started and what that did for the site.
Yeah. I mean, I think we always talked about the media stuff early on. It wasn't just the radio stuff. We would take crazy moments from the post-game show. A couple guys would slip and curse on the air, and we'd do that and things like that. And we would hear from Comcast about that stuff, claiming, like, copyright. It was like, got that a lot. But it was clear the media stuff resonated. And I always thought about it this way. And this is the analogy I always gave the people. I was like, if you're a Philly sports fan, Cole Hamels has sort of just as an example, Cole Hamels is someone who's a very impactful Philly sports athlete, won the World Series, kind of came up through here, was here, for a good 8-9 years as a major player on the Phillies throughout their thing. And I was like, how many hours have you watched Cole Hamels pitch live? Like, actually sat in front of a TV or at the game, watched him pitch live. And now, how many hours have you listened to Angelo Cataldi on the radio? And the answer is you've probably listened to thousands of hours of Angelo, or you, Harry, or Mike, or anyone who's really been around for a while. And so, like, the media people in Philadelphia honestly take up more time in, like, your brain sometimes than the players. The players are fleeting. They kind of come and go, and the legends, like the Kelseys of the world, will stick around. But a lot of guys come and go, and it's like people cared about them. So we would just start writing about stuff that happened on TV, something Barkan said, something that happened on the radio. So that was clear that it wasn't just a radio thing. And then I think the jumping off moment for the actual radio wars was Glenn Macnow, I guess, apparently, like, walked off the set at Chickies and Pete's in a rage. I I don't think his contract wasn't renewed. I forget the details. Something
Rob
between
Ellis
him and
was
Anthony.
moving into afternoons.
What's that?
When Anthony was moving to afternoons.
Yeah.
And Rob Ellis was moving with him, and it wasn't Clem.
Yeah. Yep. And we wrote about it, and the traffic was just, people were just eating that up. And I was like, wow, first of all, this is interesting. And then you realized how, as you guys know, how crazy and competitive that, the local sports talk radio industry is. And all you guys and all those guys really were a big part of people's lives. Like the hardcore sports fans put on one of those stations and leave it on all day long while they're working, while they're driving around. And to hear about, the infighting and the competition and who's going where, it was so clear early on that this is a thing. And then at some point I sort of played it up into the radio. I don't remember the moment it became Radio Wars and we did the Game of Thrones music.
But, yeah.
At some points my wife would walk by, the upstairs bedroom. At that point I had commandeered as an office, and I'd be like dancing around playing the violin to the Radio Wars music. And she was like, what the hell are you doing? I'm like, I don't know, but people are eating this up. It's goofy and stupid. And then, eventually it was like, it was us, me and Rob Tourneau, like battling for who gets the scoop over the ratings or who gets fired or whatever.
The funny thing about it is, like, some of the people in our industry couldn't stand it.
Yeah.
Like the fact that you were getting stuff. But to me, I always looked at it like, look, this is a byproduct of mattering. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think you're right that, some of the biggest names in sports in this town never played the sport. They're here. Like Angelo was here, did 30 some years. Eskin's still kicking around. Yep. Mike was around for almost 30 years. Like they've been through, from Schmidt to the guys now. It's crazy. And, I I was in the crosshairs of one of the stories that you broke. I remember you called me before you even broke it, the Dwayne from Swedesboro thing. And I was like, look, this comes with the fucking turf. You know what I mean? If you don't like it, then suck it up, Buttercup. Go do something else. Yeah. It didn't bother me. I mean, it is what it is. And I thought it was a byproduct of, in some ways, being successful.
Yeah. I mean, imagine enough people care about this stuff and about the personalities. And, I always looked at it like you guys always handled it pretty well. I mean, there's a couple of hosts around here who are a little sensitive. We could probably take some guesses, but most guys handled it pretty well. And it was like, hey, I mean, you dish it out all day on the radio, and you're big enough for people to care about you guys. And the Angelo thing's great. Like that's, I used to drive. I went to Malvern, right? I grew up in Springfield, so my dad, first 2 years of school, would drive me 35 minutes to school every morning. We listened to Angelo Cataldi every single morning. When I think of Philly sports, I think of those long drives with my dad listening to Angelo. That's one of the things I remember listening to, Steve and Mike or, Harry, you and Tony, or like a little later on. And that's a big part of people's fandoms. And, people really, really care about those. Everybody in space, including the writers. Like Ray Dittinger is like one of the most beloved people around here. And,
he's the only thing we can all agree on.
What's that?
He's the only thing we can all agree on in this town.
Pretty much, yeah. Every time we did those polls, he just always it wasn't even fun to do them anymore because he was just like universally bipartisanly loved.
Right. And then like the Josh Innes, Mike Missinelli thing came on, and that was like a redux really in a sports fashion of when I was going to school here in the 80s with Stern and DeBella, and it got quite ugly, as did that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know Andy Bloom, liked to, run that playbook back, and Josh was happy to do it. And I think it was, they had kind of came to blows, but they got in each other's faces at an Eagles practice, and we had some pictures, and I remember that. And then someone sent someone black roses or something like that. And again, I mean, just first of all, they're fun stories, and every sports fan eats that stuff up. Same with when Les Bowen punched Jeff McLean. That was like 4 years into the site. That was our biggest traffic story until like the Riley Cooper, or other than the Riley Cooper thing.
Wow.
We were on Pro Football Talk, and I was like, my God, people are like, Philly sports media is insane. And it is. It's there's so much drama. There's so much of it. There's so much. It's calmed down a little, but the Ennis Mike thing was like really well timed because that was right when we were doing the Radio Wars thing, and when both stations were really like on equal footing in many ways, depending on the time slot, and it couldn't have been more entertaining.
This is the Piranha Pit. You'd made a decision with the Riley Cooper thing to pay for the video. And, news outlets have done that for years, compensate people to get the scoop and get the story. Would you pay $5,000 for the video? And was it more than that?
$150?
What?
$150?
God damn. What was the return on that investment?
Well, we
that Shore House
directly
right now.
NBC paid us like $500 to use it on the Today Show, so that was like my direct ROI, like a day later. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I remember AJ Delario, Philly guy who ran Deadspin for a while. I mean, he was very public about paying for stuff. He paid for like some pictures of Brett Favre, and I was like, you know what? Like, if something's newsworthy, whatever. And I think this guy was a student. The guy who had the video was a student of Mike's at St. Joe's, as the story goes. And I've heard Mike sort of tell it this way, and gave it to Mike. And Mike's like, we can't break that. Like, it's not, we can't break that here. That'll burn too many bridges. And I think he made an offhand comment, like, why don't you take it to Crossing Broad? So the guy took it to us, and he was looking for like 10,000. And this is right around when the site started to make like a decent enough income. But I was like, I could afford hundreds of dollars. That's what I told the guy. I was like, I'm not even sure it is real. You haven't shown it to me. I'll PayPal you $150. And I figured it's probably a waste of money, but like that was about the amount that I could afford to pay for it at that point. And he couldn't find another buyer. So it's like, okay. And then when we got the video, I remember working with a buddy who was like an engineer, and he was good with audio video stuff. And I was like, this isn't fake, right? Like nowadays you would really have to,
right.
Is that fake? And back then it was less likely, but it was like, this is going to be pretty bad for his career. We should get this one right. So we looked at it, threw it up, but honestly, like, Riley Cooper was not a household name by any stretch. I thought it would be a story locally. I did not expect like 4 hours later SportsCenter to be calling, leaving voicemails. It just went nuts. Within like 3 minutes, I remember Elliot Shore Parks messaged or called me, and he's like, I got to get a quote from the Eagles. Where did you get this video? And I was like, like this is going to be a thing today and for the next week. But it didn't, like, the traffic spiked on the site for a few days, obviously. It certainly made more people aware of the site, but like 2 weeks later, our traffic was maybe like daily traffic 10% higher. It was like good. I wish it was a better story, to be honest. It's kind of a terrible story.
Yeah.
In every facet, but I mean, it helped put the site on the map a little bit more, but it didn't like on a day-to-day basis change a whole lot. We were like reasonably well known in Philly by that point.
What was the thing over that time that made you the most proud?
There was I don't know. I was very competitive because I really wanted to get into sports media, and I sort of, for the reasons we talked about before, I kind of like tapped out, went a different route, did some sales jobs, things like that. And I was just proud of the fact that I was able to grow an audience on our own, like sort of going up against these guys who kind of went through the system, and the Todd Zaleckis of the world, and, even some of the other bloggers who kind of hated me because I was so competitive. So I was really proud that like I turned it into something that was paying me a living. But yeah, I mean, story wise, like there was one where a guy got beat up after a Flyers game. And, like, someone sent us the video, and the police had like the low res version. And I went to the guy who sent it to him, and I was able to like technically figure out how to get the high res version. Well, the high res version was enough that it helped them identify the people. So that was cool. The one where like, hey, we did some good here. We did something good, not just always like, dumping on people.
So it wasn't a meteoric rise. I remember reading this LinkedIn post that you put up not too long ago about how the site, I mean, you were in a bad place, but then the Eagles Super Bowl run comes and you decide to sell merchandise, T-shirts. Like, first of all, what went into that decision? Like to get into the apparel business and make all these custom shirts and stuff, and just how lucrative was it?
I mean, it wasn't like the most novel idea. A lot of people in sports internet were selling knockoff t-shirts. And, but we worked with Philly Faithful for a while, like 2010 through 2012. And you guys probably know Dan Hirschberg. He was running that for a while, and good guy. And like, I was an affiliate. So what we would do is I would promote his shirts, and, you know, shirts, $25, we'd get 10% of the sale. So I'd get $2.50 per shirt we could sell. And early on, I saw, like, for some of these shirts, we were selling a lot of shirts for him. And the $2.50 was adding up, but his $8-10 margin was adding up 4 times as much. And so after a while, I was kind of like, you know, we could do shirts faster, like more reactive to something that happened the night before.
Timely,
like a phrase. Yeah.
And he had to inventory shirts, and then he had opened the space. So he had to be more thoughtful about like evergreen shirts that had a longer shelf life. And I was like, man, we could sell 50 of these for something that happened in a random February game. So I'd always been thinking about it. And about a year before, I was like, we're just going to do our own thing. Found someone to make the shirts, set up the store. And for a while we were drop shipping that, meaning like I didn't do anything with it, but we were only making like $5-7 a shirt. And my wife left her job, and part of the deal was like, listen, you fulfill the shirts. Like when we order a shirt, we'll take them in-house in our basement. You send them out. Like we will be the store. And like doing it that way, we were able to make like $10 to $14 per shirt, depending on the shirt and all that. And that was maybe like 6 months, or it was right before that Eagle season started. So like we just timed it really well. And then when the playoff run, the underdog shirts, obviously Philly special, the Kelsey speech, like we just had a shirt ready to go. So we did like the day after the parade, and again, this was a lot. It was like me and one other person. It was full time, me and Kincaid, and then a bunch of like, the Bobs, all the guys we know who were mostly freelancers. We did like $84,000 the day after the parade, which, for a company isn't a ton of money, but when it's just you, and then like every day was, so we did like well into 6 figures, like mid 6 figures in, a few weeks after the Super Bowl. And again, like at the time, we had kind of lost one of these Google ad network things that was working. They sort of pulled the plug on that. So the monetization wasn't great, and the t-shirts really saved it. Like the site was doing really well for a while. We lost this Google thing that was paying like maybe half the income. And I was really trying to piece together sponsorships and, t-shirts and all this. And having that was enough. I was like, okay, well now we can bank this money, and we got a couple more years of runway and all that. So yeah, it was, but again, there's peaks and valleys with the shirts.
Yeah.
People are interested in something. The spike is super high, but like right now in the middle of August, no one's selling a lot of t-shirts.
Mm-hmm.
Unless Bryce Harper says something really cool,
Well, speaking of additional runway, how did the legalization of sports gambling turn things for Crossing Broad?
Yeah,
you got into a lot of programming with that, right? In addition to writing.
Yeah. I mean, so so one of those jobs I had after school was in affiliate marketing. Same stuff I just described with Philly Faithful. You send someone to, in this case, DraftKings, and they pay you a cut. And I knew that there were certain industries like gambling, insurance, things that have like high customer values where these companies will pay a lot of money for a new customer. And I remember right after it was legalized and Jersey was clearly going to be the first state, my contact at DraftKings, who we worked with like DFS stuff, he's like, we might pay like $300 per new customer.
Wow.
Because you can send us. And I'm just like, it used to be like $40, which was a lot, right? For a daily fantasy player, like 40 was still, a lot per person. And I was like, well, what do they have to do? He's like, well, they probably have to sign up and deposit $5 and place a bet. I'm like, so wait a minute. Like, they sign up with our link, they deposit $5 and bet, and you're going to pay me $300 every time that happens, And so I start doing the math. Like I pull up Google Analytics and I look at our traffic in New Jersey and then Pennsylvania. And I'm just like, well, we got this number of tens of thousands of people in New Jersey. And you're like, well, if we convert 1% of them, right, or 0.5%, and I'm doing the math and I'm like, that can't be right. Like that can't be right. And so I was like, okay, this is going to be the business model. Like either I'm going to struggle with ads and t-shirts forever. By that point I had, a kid and a second one on the way, or like, this is going to have to be like the home run business thing. And that was it. Like at that point I said to Kevin, I was like, you're going to run the site for a little while and I'm going to like figure out how to make this work. And that's what we did.
Wow. All in. Eventually you sell Crossing Broad. You got the new venture now. You're pushing all in on the shore, which I said to Harry before you even got on that. Like we know how people feel about the shore around here. It's not just, hey, you're going down the shore. It's like, it's a ritual. It's like ingrained in people in this area. You got walkingtheboards.com, shorecribs.com. How are the new sites going?
Pretty good. The response has been really good. Feels like early Crossing Broad in many ways. Lost my mic here. Feels like early Crossing Broad in many ways. Like, there are days where it's like, okay, this is going great. And there's other days where like, all right, it feels like a slog. But honestly, like, to your point, people love the shore, right? I love the shore. And I remember when we used to do things, write stories about the shore. Certainly like Richards and Carter partying in Sea Isle would always do really well. But we weren't always just sports, and we would write about Manco and Manco when the owner got arrested for tax fraud. Like we would do a post on that and it would do really well. And everything we did about the shore on Crossing Broad was super popular. And then, the last couple of years I've been thinking about like, all right, what do I do next? I basically only know how to do stuff on the internet at this point. Like I had to go work for the company that bought us for a couple of years. At this point, I'm basically unemployable after you work on your own for 10 years. And I'm like, I got to find something to do next. Got to be in media and the internet. It's all I know. And it just seemed like down here, there's a lot of interest, a lot of crossover in the audience. And there's like one daily local paper that covers 3 towns down here that has 2 total reporters who are married to each other. Like and it feels like the way I used to bag on Panaccio covering the Flyers in 2010, write 1 article a day, kind of lazy. Like that's kind of the coverage down here. And particularly with the real estate stuff, it's like billions of dollars that change hands every year from Atlantic City to Cape May. I mean, these places are, the average sale price in Ocean City right now is almost $1 million. Avalon's like 2 to 3 million. And there's like nowhere to get information on this stuff. And there's, it's basically all comes from realtors. So it's like, if we could create a website and a brand that covers the shore and talks a lot about the real estate stuff, we could work with brokers and agents to kind of, send them qualified leads, send them people who are interested and build an audience. So that's, it's been 4 months, who knows? But so far so good.
That's awesome.
Yeah, not bad.
Yeah.
Crazy. It's like a crazy twisting career that probably didn't even exist when you were in high school.
No. That's the thing. Like, and what do they teach kids today about like media? I know when I was in school, it was all the traditional stuff. Even at Villanova, like my journalism professor was an old British guy talking about how to cover a feature story. And it's like that doesn't apply anymore. And I wonder now, like how much of the teaching is, hey, like you got to figure out where the audience is. I think that's the bottom line. Like, how are people consuming stuff, and then figure out a way to get the information there. That's really, all the same tenets apply, whether it's a newspaper or TikTok. It's just a different way of delivering it.
I had a professor in college when I went to Penn State. I was a broadcast cable major, it was called. And it was the radio class. And the guy was teaching radio, but never worked in radio. And I was already working in radio. And I'm like, this is not how it is.
Yeah.
Teaching things that may have been the way it was, but it wasn't the way it was at the time. It was bizarre to me. Yeah. I was like, I just can't even get through this with this guy. But anyway, Kyle, man, this was awesome. I really appreciate it. Best of luck with the new venture. Enjoy the shore for the rest of the summer, man. And schlep that cart down to the beach. You got something else, Harry?
Yeah, I got one more. I just thought of this. I apologize. But when you started Crossing Broad way back when, could you have ever imagined what we saw the other night at Citizens Bank Park, where the Phillies crowd basically took a guy who was struggling like crazy, making a ton of money with a lot of baggage on him in his first year in Philadelphia, and try to lift him up? How has the Philly fan changed in the time that you've started and to today, in your view?
Yeah, good question. I think I could have imagined it. There was some of that with Pat Burrell. Like Pat Burrell used to get boos, but everyone loved Pat. Even when he had some stretches where, he may have just been hungover for 3 straight months, but like he really struggled. But people would do that to him occasionally. So I'm not surprised that it happened. I think I thought it was a little much. I mean, look, it worked out. Like, it turned into such a feel-good story. The home run, the way it all came together. Although I'll note he didn't take out the billboard. I think that's just the Phillies billboard. And John Clark tweeted that. I don't think it's fine. Like, it doesn't really matter. But I don't think like Trey and his wife and agent called up, the billboard guys. But anyway, it turned out really well. I think what's changed now is that the fans can band together. And I think Jack Fritz sort of like maybe led this effort, sort of like half following it over the weekend. But, these groups on Twitter, commenters on sites like ours, the Spike Eskins of the world who got the Ricky podcast, you guys, you, Jason, with the Flyers, like you can kind of band together these little very impactful fan groups. And then it allows that stuff to percolate. Whereas before it was all top down stuff. And I don't know if there would have been a way for fans to get the word out as efficiently that we're going to cheer Trey Turner tonight. So I think that's what changed, but it doesn't surprise me. Like, we all know, like, we get a bad rap around here.
Yeah.
It's, by all accounts, the guy was trying his ass off, and the pressure mounts. And I think it worked out. So
I think part of it is the kind of the way Philadelphia is viewed from the outside makes sometimes we compensate the other way. And because it's like, they're always giving us shit. Like, we're the worst fan base on planet Earth. Meanwhile, it's like people from Oakland or San Francisco, and they're stabbing each other outside of a Raiders game or something, but that never gets reported on like anything that happens in Philly, especially when
we always used to cover that. And like, I remember the stories in Philly were like, the guy who puked, right? The fan who ran on the field and got tased. Meanwhile, in LA, like 3 guys got stabbed, and it's like,
outside Chavez Ravine.
right.
Yeah. Giants, Dodgers.
Yeah. I think we just like people who are like, the minute we sense weakness, I think that's when it turns bad for somebody. As long as they show they could take it, but the minute there's like that little bit of, it's like an animal. Once you sense the weakness and they begin to retreat, it's game over.
They did it a little bit with Markelle Fultz too. They tried to pick him up with how meaningful he was. I remember that.
Yeah.
And you're right about Pat Burrell. It was always, but Pat's always in the batting cage all afternoon and he's working so hard. And you just wanted to root for the guy.
Yeah. And the problem with, they tried it with Simmons. We tried it with Simmons and Fultz, but the problem was, their persona was not, it was with Simmons, it was playing video games. Like, that's the way it came across. And with Fultz, it was Chick-fil-A. Like, that was his thing. And I was like, dude, like, he kind of looked out of shape. All he did was talk about eating Chick-fil-A, and he had a phantom shoulder injury for 3 years. Like, that doesn't work here.
A lot of the fan base identified or wanted to identify or live vicariously through Pat Burrell and his off the field life, and I think that made him more rootable and endearing. And man, I want to pull this guy through this slump, man, because damn, do you know what he did last Friday night? It was like, you wanted to be him.
He was a dude. He was a dude. He was a dude. That's all it was.
Yeah. Awesome. Hey, Kyle, thanks for doing this, man. Be well, right?
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Good talking.
All right, there he is. Kyle Scott Leskowski now with the last name, Harry.
And what he's got, Walking the Boards and Shore Cribs is the new ventures, right?
Shorecribs.com.
Yeah.
Very cool. Best of luck on his new venture there. But let's tell the people about the Shore, Harry, and our great sponsor, the Fudge Kitchen.
Yeah, you could walk the boards and stop in at the Original Fudge Kitchen, the official sponsor of Not For Long Media and the Odgies podcast. Original Fudge Kitchen, of course, a staple of that Jersey Shore. 6 locations: Cape May, Wildwood, Stone Harbor, and Ocean City. They make all of their fudge and sweet treats in the store, guaranteeing a delicious product. So stop by and let them know that N4L sent you. If you're not able to visit in person, that's not a problem because they ship across the USA. Check them out at fudgekitchens.com, the original Fudge Kitchen, shipping fudge and sweet treats across the country.
There you go.
Yep.
Great place to wrap up your summer. Nice and cool out today. You survived the storms last night, huh?
I did. I get some flooding every now and then through the walls in the front of my basement, right in the storage space. So when I know that a big, heavy rain in a short period of time is coming, I put a tarp out over my front stoop, like right where my step comes up to my porch, and it saved me last night. Yeah, it saved me. So
wow, that's big.
But I stumbled upon a musician today that has been around for a long time, and I never knew of them. He's a guitar player and I wanted to at least tell you about him in case you don't already know.
Who's that?
Did you ever hear of a guy that wore a Kentucky Fried Chicken bucket on his head?
Yeah, Buckethead.
You know of Buckethead.
Yeah, he played with Guns N' Roses for a bit.
For 2 years, I believe.
Yeah.
And that was, I had already dropped out of Guns N' Roses by then. That was like 2002 to 2004.
Chinese
So
Democracy.
Okay. Yeah. See, I was gone by then. But yeah, he played with them and a bunch of other acts that I've never heard of. But I listened to this guy play the guitar, man. He is
ridiculous.
He is ridiculous.
Yep. Yeah, he wears a mask too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like a Halloween 4, I think it was inspired by the Halloween
Mike Myers.
4 Mike Myers mask. And then the Kentucky Fried Chicken thing. And he used to put a funeral sticker on it, apparently.
Yeah.
I think he's gotten rid of that. But yeah, this guy looks really freaky. Yeah. I think he's kind of tall with the long locks, and then he's got the white weird mask, and then the bucket head. And man, can he play a flying V?
Yeah, there's a lot of mystery. Like, what's under that?
Yeah.
First of all, why a Kentucky Fried Chicken bucket? Right. You know what I mean? Like, where did you come up with this persona?
That's when you grow up in Southern California and you're playing guitar and you're getting stoned with a couple of buddies, and one guy puts it on their head and they go, dude, you ought to wear this when you're on stage. Yeah, exactly.
And it sticks for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't even know how you play live with that thing.
I don't know. But I saw
play with a mask.
Some video of him in a band with Les Claypool, the bass player
from Primus.
Yes. And they apparently came together just that night at that Bonnaroo Festival down in Tennessee and played a gig on the stage for Bonnaroo. And that's the video I caught. You should dig it up if you haven't already seen it. His guitar playing is really good, man.
That's classic.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Buckethead era, Harry.
Yeah, there you go.
You're right on time.
20-some years too late. Whatever it is.
Yeah, there's this band called the Rolling Stones, Harry. You should check them out.
Yeah. No, dude, nobody's listening to this has heard of Buckethead.
Well,
no, come on.
So sure.
Really?
Let's wrap it up there. I got an interview with Flyers goaler Cal Peterson coming up at 2, Harry. I got to get some final preparations done.
We wouldn't want to interrupt that.
No. You want to stay on for it, Harry?
Yeah.
You got a
I'll transcribe. I'll transcribe for the website.
An immediate reaction.
Yes.
All right. That's episode 70. We'll talk to everybody next week. Have a great week. Hopefully the weather cooperates and we don't get that hot soup weather again. And Harry, I'll go to you once again for the last word. You got nothing, dude.
I got nothing.